Hello there guys, RMP792 here, and we're now up to Discovery Episode 4. Yes, I'm going to do all of them. So, this episode was entitled, and let me just pull up the IMDb page. The Butcher's Knife Cares Not for the Lamb's Cry. You guys remember you're supposed to be writing a goddamn Star Trek show, right? Because, Jesus Christ, that title. Anywho, this episode, there was a lot of dumb stuff in this episode, I've got to be honest. But there was also some good stuff, so very much a mixed bag, I would have to say. As per usual, I will be going into massive spoilers, so if you haven't seen it yet and you plan to, do not watch this. Go watch the episode, then come back and watch this. So, there are basically two sort of parts to this episode. There's the Klingon stuff, and then there's the stuff on the Discovery itself. The Klingon stuff's a lot shorter, so I'll probably just do all that in one go at the start. I've seen a few, articles that have sort of done similar stuff. These guys still do not really feel like Klingons at all. There was actually an article I read on IO9 3-4 days ago, something like that. With an interview with, was it Kurtzman? I think it was Kurtzman. Might have been Orsi. I can never remember which one of those is which, because they're more often than not a writing pair. But where he was talking about how the Klingons have always been presented as just the villains, and they wanted a chance to explore their culture, and I was just reading this thing going, dude, have you ever seen TNG? Where they had a Klingon on the crew. It feels like he's not really a Star Trek fan. He's just somebody who was told he was writing Star Trek, so he watched the original series, and that's all he bothered to do. Or maybe just read some Cliff Notes versions of the original series. Because occasionally they'll bring in something from later. They'll mention bat'leths, for example. But the design for the bladed weapon they have is not even close to being a bat'leth. It's an interesting design, but it's sure as hell not a bat'leth. So, these Klingons still do not feel like Klingons, because Klingons do not give two tosses about their dead. So the whole, or correction, they care about their dead. They just don't care about their bodies. Their bodies are meat once they're gone. And the whole point is they just sort of got left behind there because reasons. Which were kind of, that's kind of dumb. And, because Klingons will rescue other Klingon warriors if their ships are disabled or whatever, because no point letting them die a dishonorable death just because. They will pick them up because, hey, more warriors is good. So that seemed kind of stupid. You've got, is it Vok? Something like that. The albino-looking one, who's commenting on, the ship's been disabled, and how are we going to get this part we need? Well, we could go and nick it from the Xinjiao. Okay, the fact that their tech is compatible is kind of janky, but oh well. I'll assume they're going to modify it significantly. An offhand remark to the fact that they ate Michelle Yeoh's corpse. Klingons don't usually eat their enemies. I mean, okay, yes, they will eat their enemies' hearts, but that's almost as much about honouring the dead, enemy as it is. That's just classic sort of warrior culture. We're gonna eat the courage of our enemies kind of thing. Now, I appreciate that they were starving, and frankly, fresh meat is no point wasting it. But yeah, I understand why that comment made a lot of people kind of uncomfortable. So yeah, and of course, his whatever the hell she was called, I can't remember any of their character names. Basically appears to betray him to is it Cole, something like that. Cole, I think. Anyway, that dude the dude who turned up, she appears to betray him, and I'm just sitting there going, well, she's obviously just playing along in order to, I'm sorry, you're Klingons. Settle this in single combat. All Vok had to do there was challenge him to single combat. At that point, they fight and they fight and they fight and they fight and they fight, and then one of them comes out on top. Brilliant, job done. That would have and hell, we could have the other guy refuse single combat, which would be very dishonourable and thus show him to be a very dodgy kind of Klingon, which is clearly what they're going for. And now Vok's going to live with the group who are, how did she describe them? Was it liars and traitors or something like that? The sneaksy ones, basically. So he's going to learn how to be a bit on the sneaksy side. So that was a whole thing. And that entire plot, it's still a massive, massive mistake the show has made having them speak in Klingon all the time. It really is. I maintain what Jake and I said in the first couple of episodes. They should have just, first couple of lines of dialogue in Klingonese, pan round, and at that point the actors all start speaking English, because that actually lets the actors act. As it stands, it feels like they're trying to read everything off cue cards off to the side of the screen, so they're having to pause after almost every word just so they can figure out what the hell the next bit is, which is always kind of a problem when you've got people speaking a fictional language. And the usual way to get around that is that they have to emote significantly with their faces. If you look at something like Game of Thrones, for example, when they're speaking Dothraki, the actors have to do a lot with their face because there's not as much they can do with their voice because they are, to all intents and purposes, speaking gibberish. I'll be honest, I don't doubt there are people out there who listened to that Klingonese and understood every word. That's not the majority of the audience because Klingonese is an invented language. Same goes for Dothraki. Whereas here, because of the very elaborate makeup they're wearing, there's a limit to how much they can emote. And it's clear a lot of those actors don't have that much experience with it. There was actually a point during the episode where Doug Jones' character, Saru, actually manages to emote really well through the makeup. And that's largely because that's Doug Jones. He spends like 90% of his acting time in heavy makeup. So he's had plenty of time to get used to it, figure out what works, what doesn't, and he's just really good at it, largely through boatloads of practice. So these Klingons just aren't very good, and having them speak Klingonese all the time is a massive impairment to actually making those Klingon scenes interesting. I'll freely admit, it's tedious reading subtitles. It always has been. I don't enjoy doing it. Especially since we were watching this with dinner, and having just, it's a Klingon scene. Sort of thing. So that was annoying. The rest of the episode was also kind of a mixed bag. It starts with that sort of pretty, admittedly, very nice effect shot where I'm just thinking, okay, what was the point of that? And the thing she gets her uniform from clearly isn't meant to be a replicator because they refer to it as a synthesizer or something like that. So it's obviously meant to be sort of early version of the tech, which, okay, fine, but if it's, and we know that in TOS they had means of producing, clothing that would allow them to blend in with native populations on various planets, because that's a thing that turns up on several occasions. So I don't have a problem with them having that. It's just that felt completely unnecessary to see. Once again, there's still massive overuse of hologram technology. I mean, where she basically had a hologram of herself projected for use of a mirror. That was utterly pointless. You could have just used a mirror, guys. It probably would have been cheaper on the effects budget. Rather than actually having to do a mirrored double shot. Then her roommate comes in and basically has this box that's for her, and it's part of the last will and testament of Captain Georgiou. Which, it makes sense that something from her will would have been left to Michael, given that it's not like she would have had time to change her will after Michael neck pinched her and everything went to hell. So she doesn't want to open that because she feels guilty, so she toddles up to the bridge, and there's a battle simulation going on, and I genuinely couldn't tell if we were actually meant to know if that was a simulation or not. I mean, the second they went onto the bridge and that was going on, I was like, oh, it's a simulation. I I'm not sure if the audience was meant to be able to tell that, but it seemed very, very obvious to me, especially given that the captain was clearly bored and exasperated with his crew not doing well enough. And then he takes Michael and takes her down to the science lab where he's got the critter that I kept calling a gene stealer, which I shall now refer to as Ripper because for some reason the security chief names it that. To be fair, it does keep ripping things apart, but hey. But yeah, so where he's got Ripper and his basic comment is, this thing killed a whole bunch of Klingons and they could do precisely dick to it. Figure out how that happened. And buggers off. So, isn't that a job for a biologist? I thought she was a physicist. Once again, all scientists in Star Trek are polymaths. This is basically a thing. They'll occasionally bring in an actual expert in a thing, but most of the time it's just, using multimodal reflection sorting, I was able to do this. For a show that likes to claim that it's scientifically accurate, Star Trek does take science and beat it with a stick a lot of the time. I'll freely accept that. So he wants, some information on how they can use this creature's natural abilities. So it's clearly got, some sort of thick hide or chitinous scales that resist phasers, and then bladed weapons, and it's obviously aggressive enough to quite handily handle some Klingons. But as she studies it, she realizes that it's actually non-aggressive. It'll only act in self-defense. And then Commander Dumbass comes in, and oh my god, this scene. So she wins a Darwin Award for this because she basically comes out and says, we need to kill this thing. I'm going to get you a better sample. I'm going to cut off one of its claws with this. I'm assuming that was meant to be a McLeth, incidentally. It's resistant to guns, so I've got this gun. And it's clearly resistant to blades, so I'm using this blade. And yes, I appreciate she used a sedation protocol, but given everything else this thing's been resistant to, shouldn't you have checked it was asleep before you lowered the force field? So yeah, she died like a dumbass. I get the impression this scene was meant to be kind of shocking and horrifying, but A, they've barely introduced and characterized her, so it meant nothing, and B, she died like a dumbass. And I have no sympathy for people who are killed by their own stupidity. It's the same way that I've been rewatching Attack on Titan, and the scene where Eren gets his leg bitten off is supposed to be horrifying, whereas I just find it hilarious because he's a dumbass and he's doing stupid things and it almost gets him killed. Should have got him killed if it wasn't for the magic stuff. But anyway, that's a different show. So yes, I have absolutely zero sympathy for the security chief who just got mauled to death. Because let's talk about a different security chief death, Tasha Yar. Right? Tasha Yar's death was utterly pointless, which was kind of the point, if that makes sense. Insofar as she basically just gets slapped aside by this creature and randomly killed. She dies the death of a red shirt or a gold shirt in TNG. Utterly pointless, just there to prove that the situation is serious. Which, at the time, was actually quite shocking because, that was, 15, 16 episodes into the series? So she was an established character, we knew who she was. She hadn't had enough, focus to really sort of, let's face it, the reason that Denise Crosby wanted to leave the series was because she didn't think she was getting anything worth doing. She freely admits that the scene at the beginning of Skin of Evil, where it's just her and Worf talking about how she's going to be in this martial arts tournament, and he's basically saying, you'll win, you're really good, and it's just a small little interpersonal scene between these two people, and she freely admits if she'd got more of that kind of stuff, she probably would have stayed on. So that was genuinely shocking. This was a random character we've barely been introduced to getting mauled to death for no reason. So yeah, that if it was meant to be shocking and horrifying, it wasn't. It was vaguely funny. So Michael manages to get the critter back into the containment field because she basically just shines some light in it and it scuttles in and locks it back up. More side-to-side transporting, which again they didn't have, but anyway. So she's dead, and Lorcia is obviously a bit pissed off about this. And yeah, I've seen some people commenting that the reason the security chief did something that dumb was because at that point Lorcia was pumping the emergency signals from the colony they were trying to save through the PA system, to basically shame their chief scientist into getting their swanky new drive working, which is a terrible way to command people, guys. I mean, yeah, guilt tripping your crew will just make them hate you, frankly. So yeah, Lorcia is a bit of a bastard, which is actually an interesting dynamic for a Starfleet captain. We haven't really seen that before. We've seen Sisko, who is a good man, willing to do unpleasant things when he feels it's necessary. Whereas Lorcia is basically in full-on whatever is necessary mode, which is interesting. Normally when we see these characters, they're the crazy Admiral of the Week. Side note, there's definitely something in the water coolers at Starfleet headquarters that sends all the admirals completely mental because, they did a lot of those crazy Admiral of the Week stories. But, so yeah, I've kind of skipped ahead a bit because I wanted to talk about the death of Commander Dumbass. But anyway, so they basically, they're on the verge of getting their swanky new Spore drive online, which is going to allow them to, blink across the universe instantly. Side note, if you've seen Dark Matter, it's just the blink drive. Okay? So, yeah, somebody else has already done this idea, guys. Side note, I'm really miffed that we're not getting a Season 4 of Dark Matter, given that it ends on a goddamn cliffhanger. Anyway. But yes, so they can't get the drive to work because they nicked a thing from the Glen, which they think needs an additional component. It needs some sort of supercomputer. And my initial comment was, it's going to require a human brain plugged into it, isn't it? Or something like that. So I figured they'd be plugging Michael into it, was my initial guess. And then later on when she realizes, this creature is somehow connected to the spores, so maybe they have to use it. I was like, okay, Now we're getting into Equinox. If you don't remember, Equinox is the Voyager two-parter where Voyager finds another Starfleet ship in the Delta Quadrant. And it's a smaller ship. It's only got a crew of about 50, 55, something like that. And they've been sort of slowly making their way home getting the ever-living bejesus kicked out of them. Because again, tiny ship. Until they basically lucked upon this alien race that they realised, these sort of trans-dimensional aliens, and they realised they could use them as a fuel source to supercharge their engines. But doing so obviously kills the aliens in question. And it's a case of, is it worth killing a whole bunch of aliens to get your own crew home? And it's a legitimately good two-parter. It was the end of season 5? Yeah, I think it was the end of season 5 going into season 6. But no, it was a good little story and had some interesting stuff in it. Occasionally Voyager did good stuff. It should be said once again. But yeah, so it kind of reminded me of that, where it's a case of, is it right to use this creature in order to save lives? Because they clearly don't have this creature's consent. They plug it in and they get their blink drive working. Side note, every time they call it the Spore drive, I just kind of go, oh god, that sounds ridiculous. So there's basically this Federation dilithium mining colony getting attacked, which apparently produces 40% of the dilithium in the Federation. That seems like a lot. Now, don't get me wrong, given where we are in the timeline, the Federation isn't that big, but dilithium is not an uncommon substance. It crops up relatively frequently throughout the galaxy. So, the fact that this one place produces 40% of it and wasn't better defended seems a bit dodgy, but oh well. So they use their blink drive to get there, and the sequence for it activating looks ridiculous. It's the whole the outer ring spins and then the second ring spins the other way, and it's just oh god, why? All that reminded me of was the 200th episode of Stargate, where where you've got the bit with the puppets and you go, make it spin, but sir, it doesn't spin. What? It's round. It has to spin. Spinning is so much cooler than not spinning. Look, I'm the general. I want it to spin. That's what it reminded me of. It was goofy, frankly. And the effect where the ship kind of flails around and sort of vanishes. It's not... It's a bit goofy. I appreciate the effect of it kind of super extending as it goes to warp is also in many ways kind of goofy, but that's actually got a little bit of science to back it up. That's relativity. That is basically the faster a thing moves, the longer it gets. Sounds weird. It's actually it's completely scientifically, mathematically accurate. I know. It's great. That's another one of the reasons you can't really hit light speed, because you'd basically gain infinite length. Relativity's fun in a completely insane kind of way. But no, so they use their drive, and the first time they try to use their drive, they accidentally end up right near a sun, which that's quite unlucky. Statistically speaking, the amount of space taken up by stars is tiny compared to the amount of space that's taken up by space. But anywho, the second time they manage to get exactly where they want to go, and they appear right above this colony. The people making this have forgotten that Starfleet vessels can't enter atmospheres. That has to be it, because the Xinjiao did it, with apparently no ill effect, and granted, by basically blinking straight into the atmosphere, they avoid having to go through re-entry, but gravity is still a thing. Not to mention sudden atmospheric pressure, atmospheric shear, all sorts of other bits and bobs. So yeah, that felt rather goofy. They take out a couple of Klingons with an initial phaser barrage, which is fine. And then they let themselves get hammered while the Klingons are closing them. Then they beam out and leave behind some sort of explosives. Why? Why was that your battle tactic? That was not a good battle tactic. Given that it basically led to you getting pummeled down to about 10% shields. I appreciate needing to test if you could do rapid successive jumps. And based on the fact that Ripper was looking really exhausted, after the second one, I'm assuming that they're basically going to be limited to sort of 2, maybe 3 jumps at a time before it needs to rest. Which actually makes perfect sense. If let's face it, you plug biological components in, they're going to get tired. But so I that battle sequence was not very good. But if you're going to have them do a tactic that with something like that, you need to explain what happened. I mean, were they torpedoes? Were they just crates of explosives? What were they? I'm not entirely sure what happened. And the stuff with the miners coming out to be like, oh, they saved us. Yeah, there'd be a crap ton of debris raining down on that, and most of it's going to be falling pretty damn sharpish. You're going to want to stay inside, guys. But so yeah, a lot of dumb in this episode. I freely admit that. I actually legitimately like the fact that they've gone with the whole this creature was just misunderstood and was acting in self-defense rather than just being a monster. That feels very Star Trek. That's the Horta. The Horta? Horta? The critter from TOS, where they're on the mining planet, and it's the tunneling silicon-based creature. That's where the line "it's life, Jim, but not as we know it" comes from, because it's a completely different kind of life form. And the miners think it's some sort of monster that's killing them, and frankly, they've been accidentally infringing on its territory, and they've been threatening its young without even realizing it was there, because when they scanned for life forms, it was so different that they never detected it. So they end up forming effectively a treaty with these creatures, whereby they'll help, whereby these creatures will basically help the miners get to the stuff they want, because these creatures are really, really good at tunneling. And that's actually, it's a legitimately good episode of the original series. So it had vibes of that. The fact they're using this creature sort of against its will feels kind of dodgy. If it's smart enough that its brain can be used like a supercomputer, it's got to be pretty damn close to sentient at the very least. So, maybe they should be trying to ask it if it's willing to act as their navigator. I don't know. We will see. That's a moral conundrum to keep going on with. Their chief scientist, I'm just going to look up his name. Paul Stamets is the character name, played by Anthony Rapp. He's continuing to be the most Star Trek feeling character, because he's a scientist who's in it for the love of the science and the love of the exploration. Discovery clearly wants to be a show about the conflict between the two halves of Starfleet, the science side and the military side. And the captain is clearly the military side, and Stamets is clearly the science side. The problem is, at the moment, they're both too archly drawn as one side or the other. I think what we need coming up is a point at which, Stamets actually admits that, he realizes he has a responsibility now. He's created this thing to use it for the good of people, and the captain needs to see something that actually inspires him with a sense of wonder just about the universe itself. Because at the moment, they're too archly drawn. They are too far to each side of the debate, which, it's not working at the moment for me, I'll be honest, in that regard. Because at the moment, they're basically just kind of sniping at each other because their values are too different, which, again, it's different for a Star Trek show, but it's so different it doesn't feel like Star Trek, which is a bit of a problem. What else? Oh, yeah. Minor characters. Please, can we have some? Because at the moment, there are only sort of, the captain, Michael, Stamets, tactical officer just got killed, Saru, her roommate, and the Klingon Vok. That's not enough characters for a Star Trek show. That's 5 on the ship. That's 5 on Discovery itself and a recurring antagonist. We need more. I want to see more of the crew of the Discovery and actually have. They keep showing that the female officer who was on board the Xinjiao, the one who's now got the sort of implant thing there. They've shown her, and drawn attention to her deliberately in the last couple of episodes, and has she had a single line of dialogue at all? If she's had anything stronger than a "yes sir" or something like that, I don't remember it. So we need to know these people's names. They're all listed on IMDb, so they all have character names. Let us actually get to know these people. What we need now is an episode that focuses on other characters. We need to get into the relationship between Michael and this survivor of the Xinjiao, whose name hang on, I'm looking up her name because I want to know what it is. Okay, Kayla Detmer is apparently the character name. So I want to see how that relationship deals with what happened on the Xinjiao. Other people on the bridge, let us know some of these aliens and where they come from and what's going on with them. At the moment, it's too focused on its main character, which is a problem, because TOS had that, which was very much a layover from the era of which it came. It was a time at which the main character was the main character and everybody else was kind of secondary. TNG, on the other hand, realised that each individual was within the crew was very important. So you'd get scenes between Geordi and Data, or Data and Riker, or Riker and Worf. Lots of different combinations of characters in different scenes. Here, it feels like every scene features every scene on the Discovery, I should say, features either Michael, the captain, Saru, or the scientist engineer. And, let us see some of the more minor characters just chatting and talking about how they feel about their mission, and the fact that the captain's pushing them to be soldiers even though they're not, and more ensemble-y kind of stuff is what I want to say, is what I want to see. So yeah, that was episode 4. I'm going to read it again because holy crap, this title. The butcher's knife cares not for the lamb's cry. Anyway, I'm not going to go off on one about the title because, yikes. Oh, and apparently the next episode is called Choose Your Pain. Dudes, Star Trek. Oy. Anyway, so yeah, that's what I've got on episode 4. I'm still going to keep watching it. It's still got potential if they can fix the problems that they've created for themselves. But anyway, so yeah, Star Trek Discovery, I'm going to keep watching. It's not bad. It just doesn't feel at all like Star Trek at the moment. So, yep, that's all I've got. So, yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in future videos.